There's a kind of quiet power we all bring with us into every situation. And most of the time, we don't even think about it. But it happens every day. In our training classes, on calls, inside our agencies, and in our personal lives. It shows up in our body language, our tone, the words we choose, and whether we lean into something or pull back. It can actually help shape how things turn out. And over the course of the last year, I've started to notice how powerful it really is. Watching people walk into similar situations and get very different results, including me. It was evident that our perspective and how we show up can impact how things turn out. Yet we don't often give it much thought. And so what's become clear to me since last we met is that we don't have to let our perspective run on autopilot. We can use it intentionally. The first place I saw this was in one of my training classes last year. I had a student, the type many of you are familiar with. He walked in 15 minutes late, no apologies or attempts to keep from disturbing the class. He actually stood in the center aisle, carefully surveying the classroom, looking for his preferred seat. And when he found it, walked over there and he set down his coffee, his energy drink, his cell phone, then slowly took off his coat, sat down sideways in his chair with his legs fully extended in front of him and his arms crossed on his chest. Now, I'll be honest with you, in the moment, I had already decided how the day was going to go with him. He doesn't want to be here. He's got no interest in this class. It's going to be a long day. That was my perspective. And normally, that's where I'd stay. But for whatever reason, that day I didn't. I don't even remember why. I just remember thinking, okay, let's see if I can turn this around. And so instead of letting that first impression of him stick, I started actively engaging him, asking his opinions, listening to his concerns about the course material, and really trying to understand where he was coming from. As you can imagine, in the beginning, it was a little bit challenging. I got short answers, sarcasm, and plenty of resistance. And I was thinking, well, this isn't going well. But as the day went on, his sarcasm began to disappear. He actually leaned into the class, started asking questions, and got involved. At the end of the day, he came up to me and he said, Troy, I got to be honest with you. I was dreading coming to this class today. I thought it was going to be a complete waste of my time. But I'm really glad I came because I learned a lot. Well, I was not expecting that. Here was a guy that came in closed off and disengaged, and now, of all people, was leaving grateful and energized. I couldn't believe it. And that got me thinking about what happened. At the beginning of class, we were both operating from our own perspectives. And those perspectives were shaping our behaviors, and we weren't even thinking about it. His assumptions about the class were directing his behavior, and, well, to be honest, my assumptions about him were guiding mine. But when I intentionally adjusted my perspective, I showed up differently. And that changed the dynamic just enough for him to see the class in a new way and actually engage, which, in the end, influenced what he took out of the class. And that was really interesting to me. Being aware of my perspective and using it intentionally had helped change not only my experience, but his as well. Once I started seeing how often perspective was operating on autopilot, I saw it everywhere. I'm sure many of you have seen the same thing. voluntold students showing up thinking they don't need this, already deciding that this class is a waste of their time. Going into calls and saying, here we go again, and setting the tone of the interaction before it even begins. Seeing a particular supervisor or policy or assignment and already having our minds made up before ever giving it a chance. And I've also seen how perspective runs on autopilot in a place where perspective matters the most, at home. I've been married almost 25 years now. My wife is the love of my life. And one thing she'll tell you about me is that I'm extremely regimented. I like things in order and on time. When life doesn't line up that way, I don't always handle it gracefully. So over the years, like many people who have been married, I started noticing that I was beginning to get frustrated over some of the little things. Like when we'd be running late because she was still getting ready. And in my head, I'm thinking, come on, let's go, we're gonna be late. And I could feel my patience disappearing. And my tone with her would change. And well, let's be honest, things went downhill from there for me. But the truth is, being late wasn't new. My reaction was, when we were dating, it didn't really bother me. Instead of dwelling on how long it was taking her to get ready, I was thinking about how amazing she was going to look when she came down and how excited I was to be with her. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing that. And I didn't even notice. I was on autopilot. What I needed to remind myself was that while I can't always control when we walk out the door, I can control how I show up in the moment. And that, well, that, my friends, definitely influences how the rest of the night went for me. So when I looked at all of this together, something started to become obvious. We all walk into rooms, calls, conversations, already carrying assumptions, our own perspectives, without even thinking about it. But they're always there, in the background, running on autopilot, shaping how we show up and influence what happens before we ever even engage with what's in front of us. So what became obvious and clear to me is not that perspectives influence outcomes. We all know that. But rather, we don't have to let our perspectives operate unconsciously. We can pause, examine it, and choose how we show up. And so tonight, I'll leave you with two questions to consider. Where in your life is your perspective on autopilot and costing you? And if you chose to look at it differently, intentionally, what might change? Your perspective is already shaping something that is important to you. The only question is whether it's by default or by design. Thank you.